If we were to explore the intersection of geometry and God, where might we end up? Well, the first thing that I think about is this story, our current myth of creation, which is that once upon a time, some tens of billions of years ago, there was a big bang, right? Poof! Out of nothing, the universe begins. It's a little bit far-fetched, but there we are. And once beginning, the universe moved out in all directions simultaneously and has been moving out in all directions simultaneously ever since. Now, God is generally the archetypal space of the biggest, the best, a more beautiful world. It's what is beyond, it's what we're moving towards. And so the biggest thing that God could possibly be is everything. All that is moving out in a circular direction along with the possibility field. So when reality was first created in this mythology of the Big Bang, it obviously has a much smaller possibility field. Cell phones were not possible at the moment of the Big Bang. Neither were personal computers, neither were plants, right? If you tried to plant a plant an hour after the Big Bang, or a year after the Big Bang, or 10,000 years after the Big Bang, there weren't the materials to build the iPhone, there weren't the right conditions to plant a plant, there weren't any people, etc., etc. But now there are. In other words, we have a bigger possibility field today than we had yesterday, and a bigger possibility field yesterday than the day before. So as reality has been getting steadily bigger in all directions, right? When you have an explosion of possibility, it doesn't just go out to the left or go out to the right. It goes out in all directions simultaneously. We like to think of, references to the earth, north, south, east, west, right? And so it goes out in all directions, 360 degrees or 10 million degrees, depending on how small of the increments that you want to use to divide up the circle. So reality is spherical. It began spherical, and it has continued to grow in a spherical fashion. And as it grows, the possibility field grows with it. Every single year, every single moment in the entirety of existence, the possibility field gets bigger in all directions. Now, if God is the totality, the biggest, the greatest, the best of all that is, then what is that limited by? Well, it's limited by our imagination, but it's also limited by the possibility field, right? God can be bigger than your possibility field or my possibility field, but God cannot be bigger than God. God cannot be bigger than the biggest possibility field currently in existence. Now, what is the biggest possibility field? It is the entirety of all that is and all that could be. So it seems that the best shape to represent God is the sphere. Now, most cults, most cultures, most religions like to narrow God down because that's pretty big, isn't it? Being bigger than any human being can imagine, being bigger than the planet, than the solar system, than the galaxy, being the entire possibility field. But that is the biggest thing that exists, is the possibility field. But that's so big, it's unrelatable. And so what we generally do is we dumb God down. Perhaps we cut the one into two. This is a great way to make God smaller. And if you cut the world into two, you've now created an entire possibility field of polarity. Up and down, right and left, male and female, good and bad. And having divided all of reality in half, you now have two equal halves, and you could then say that God is the good part. And then you've got to create a counterpoint. So then you could say that the devil is the bad part. So now God is half as small as they were a moment ago. Or you could say that God is male. And now God is half as small because, the entirety of the possibility field is half male and half female, half masculine, half feminine. And so you can divide. You can say God is white, God is male. You can say God is good and not bad. And that's bad and that's good. And as soon as you divide the one into two, you have two equal halves, which if they are in tension with one another, men in tension with women, God or good in tension with evil, if they are in tension with one another, then you have a tremendous amount of waste, right? Because one of the most inefficient things people can do is get together with a group of 100 people or so, cut the group in half, and form a tug of war or a battle, right? We all pull to the left, you all pull to the right, and we see who wins. But regardless of who wins, the outcome of that is, a bunch of stomped grass and moving a few inches one way or another, right? It's no great outcome. To have a God at war with other gods it means that God doesn't include the other gods. So that God is therefore smaller than the totality of all that is. Anything that is in conflict with anything else is not as potent as something that is in conflict with nothing and is connected with everything else, right? And so the bigger, right, something that is more connected has a bigger possibility field. Something that has less conflict has a bigger possibility field. So, as far as geometry is concerned, the largest thing that exists is the possibility field, out of which emerges the geometry or the probability field, out of which emerges the actual field. Possibility many times smaller, probability, many, many times smaller, actuality. Right? And the possibility field is spherical. It is the biggest thing that we are capable of conceptualizing. Right? Because it defines the words possibility, is saying, if we can imagine it, if we can speak it, if we can think it, it is possible. But if we cannot, if it goes beyond words, if it goes beyond what we are capable of conceptualizing, then there is a possibility field, an unknown possibility field that is unknown to us, right? But ultimately, there is a possibility field for anything, for anyone. And that is a spherical shape, because possibility stretches out equally from any moment in space and time. The possibility field stretches out equally in all directions. And so the greatest entity, the greatest structure that can exist, that is possible, is at the edges of the sphere, includes all possibility. And the greatest power that exists does so in such a way that everything that exists is in harmonious collaboration with everything else from that point of view.